Welcome to City Hall. We will get started this morning with our invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Ted Wilson is here. He's the chaplain for the Oklahoma City Fire Department, and he'll lead us through the invocation. Afterwards, I'll ask Councilman Pat Ryan to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please stand?
If you'll join me in your tradition as we pray, please. Our Father, again, we thank you for today, and thank you for a time that you've given us to make an impact in people's lives. In our world, and those that we care the most about in this world, we pray that we will be exactly what we're supposed to be. Father, we pray that you help us to be sensitive to others' needs, help us to settle our issues with dignity and with quickness. And Father, we do ask that you help us to settle the issues that we have with my firefighters in the city, and God, that would be put to rest, and everybody does the right thing. Father, we ask for wisdom in that negotiations and in those talks, because we need integrity, we need honesty, and we need a quick resolution. God, you know every person here in this room and everybody listening to my voice and the needs that they have and the personal needs they have. And it's my prayer, Father, that you meet those needs in a tangible, real way. Bless their lives. Help us to be what you want us to be today. For it's my Lord's name. Amen.
Please join me in flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's March. If I wait for the microphone to work, it is March, and St. Paddy's Day is around the corner, and this morning we are going to talk about Irish American Day, and as an Irish American, it is always my pleasure to welcome up the group. Come on up, everybody. Come on up. There's a little green in my tie today, not nearly as much green, though, as the rest of this group. We have a proclamation. I'll ask the clerk to read it while we get settled.
Whereas Irish Americans have made important contributions to American art, music, and literature, and whereas many Oklahomans claim ancestors who were immigrants from Ireland, and whereas in the past decade, Oklahoma has experienced a significant flow of migration to the state, and many of the residents are of recent immigrant stock. Whereas St. Patrick's Day is a traditional occasion of honoring the contribution of Irish heritage to Americans. Now, therefore, Mick Cornett, the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim March 13th, 2010 to be the annual St. Patrick's Parade Day and March 17th, 2010 to be Irish American Day in Oklahoma City.
Let's show our appreciation to this group. And I understand the Grand Marshal is a person we know very, very well, the outgoing president at Oklahoma City University, Tom McDaniel. Tom, congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. We're delighted to be here. This is my wife, Brenda, Paula Jones, the parade chairman, Tim and Peggy O'Connor, that you well know from Catholic Charities, and we're delighted that the council is permitting us to have a St. Patrick's Day parade this coming Saturday. We're doing this year, Mick, to raise money for the Sanctuary Women's Development Center in Stockyard City. It's a new entity that is there for homeless women and children, doing a great job down there, and we appreciate this chance to be with you. Thank you.
You're welcome, and that is a growing concern and growing need in our community. So I want to thank Catholic Charities for what they do on that cause and all of the others that you're involved with throughout the year. But thanks especially, and we look forward to St. Patrick's Day and seeing President McDaniel at the front of the float.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're on item 3 of the council agenda. Item 3A and 3B are a series of appointments, one to the Fish and Game Commission, the other to the Professional Liaison Committee. All right, comments or questions on item 3? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We're on to item 4. This is the Journal of Council Proceedings. Item 4A is to receive the Journal of Council Proceedings for March 2nd, and item B is to approve the Journal of Council Proceedings for February 23rd. All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. And item 5 is request for uncontested continuances.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a couple this morning. On page 15, under item 8G1, item B, 2345 West Park Place. I ask that it be stricken. The owner is removed. Item D, 2012 Northwest 11th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has removed. Moving to item 8H1C, 605 Northwest 4th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. And item E, 1316 Northwest 7th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured.
Any other requests for uncontested continuances? All right, we'll recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Trust. Looks like there are 3 items. All right, we're voting on the MFA. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We'll adjourn OCMFA, convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority. There is 1 item. All right, comments or questions on this item? All right, cast your votes on the PPA. And it passes unanimously. Adjourn OCPPA, reconvene the council meeting with the consent docket. All right, we have a motion and a second on the consent docket. AF, all right. All right, I have AF, K, and O. Larry?
AG, Mayor.
AG. Sam? AM. All right, Brian, you want to get us started with AF?
This item is to begin the discussion for the American Le Mans Series Grand Prix racing. And I just wanted to know if we could have just a little bit of discussion on it. I know that I've had some questions that I can't really answer, such as funding sources, track layout, infrastructure. I mean, my thought was the cars, those types of cars cannot run on our streets the way that they are now. So just maybe just a brief discussion on kind of what we should expect to see.
Yeah, I think that's where we are, is trying to determine exactly what the next steps are going to be. And this is very preliminary. But what I didn't want to happen was us start having that level of discussion without the public being aware of what was going on. I think we need a community-wide discussion about this whole concept, because this is a kind of an eye-opening step for Oklahoma City. Some people are going to think this is the greatest thing ever, and there's going to be some things that think we're just absolutely nuts. So that's one of the reasons we're just bringing it up. They are here today and can discuss, but I think the questions you're asking are the same questions that all of us are asking. What are we getting ourselves into if we move forward on this? Pat, did you want to say something?
Just to follow up on Brian's question, from the 50,000-foot level where we are right now, are the indications that the city could benefit economically from this kind of a program? In other words, I don't think we ought to commit the city manager's time and effort to go forward with these discussions unless we have at least a feeling that the discussions will result in an overall economic benefit.
My feeling is that we should expect something on the level of the Big 12 men's and women's championships.
Okay.
The additional benefits would be that it would be, or could be, an annual event, and you could have a local organizing group that would be in charge and run an organization on a year-round basis, and then put on an event for, say, 1 week each year, with the actual track set up for 1 weekend per year. That's the general concept. It might be similar in a way to a stop on the professional golf tours, in which you have a local organizing group that's in action 52 weeks a year, but still the tournament just takes place in 1 week a year. And I could see some sort of concept if we can go forward on this. Yeah,
in other locales where this has been done, there has been a positive benefit back to the community. That's the point, that we start with that basis, that the result of all our discussions hopefully will be some kind of arrangement that will provide some positive economic benefit for us.
Yes, I mean, I think there are results all over the map. I'm sure you could find horror stories and success stories out there, but yes. And, you know, our concept is a little different from many in that in many, they just don't have a street or a section of the city where they think it's appropriate, and they wind up running them in a stadium parking lot, which is a concept that's done. What we're talking about, though, is actually running it on our city streets. I mean, this is a fairly aggressive, high-profile, but aggressive stance. Yeah, Larry?
Yeah, just a couple of comments, Mayor, and see if I'm on the right track. We had a group come in prior to the MAPS 3 vote where they laid out a plan of what it would take to get Grand Prix racing in Oklahoma City. They determined that there were streets that this type of racing could be done on. They also had a price tag for some infrastructure that would be required, assuming that the city would buy the fencing and the barricades, et cetera, for that particular event. And as I recall, the price tag for that was fairly significant in terms of millions of dollars. You used the analogy of a golf tour coming in. In a golf tour coming in, we don't build Oak Tree. Oak Tree is already there. So are we talking about building a race course for them by getting that infrastructure, and or are we talking about possibly funding through the CVB prize money, promotion money, et cetera, to kind of fuel the engine? And if we're talking about infrastructure of significant dollars, I think it's honesty up front to tell the folks who are doing this that our budget probably is not going to include any monies for infrastructure, that they're going to have to do that, either lease it or build it themselves, rather than look to the city for significant infrastructure participation. Because my folks want potholes fixed, not a racetrack downtown. And that's the perspective that I have, and I think the promoters ought to know that up front.
If I respond to that, I see this maybe more similar to the hockey deal that we did recently. There's going to be a major event that's going to produce revenue. There will be some fees paid to the city. And with those fees paid to the city, there's going to be an expectation of some operational things that are going to be done on an annual basis. And there's a request out there for a certain amount of capital that needs to be done, and multi-million dollars of capital, just like it was multi-million dollars worth of capital that we're in the process of doing for the Cox Center. In the Cox Center, the team's revenue and ticket surcharge paid for those capital improvements at the Cox Center, and we anticipate that we're working through this and negotiating that we'll be able to amortize the greatest portion of those capital improvements through some of the revenue the city receives off of our share and looking at some other things. There could be some CVB involvement. There's recently a Quality Jobs Act that passed one of the houses of the Capitol that could provide some help along this matter. We don't have it all put together at this point in time. We're in those stages to try to put that together. A lot of moving pieces. We're trying to negotiate. Where is it going to be, Councilman Walters? Yes, it's specifically they're looking at a route down around the Bricktown area that would be in. So that's one of the things that we're looking at right now. The logistics, trying to tie down specifically what the capital costs are going to be. How big a fence do you need in this location on this straightaway, and what do you need in this curve? You know, what do we need to do to our existing streets to accommodate that? And those are all the discussions we're having. And those things are the capital costs we're talking about. And so that's what we're looking at this point in time. Again, this is the preliminary stages, and what we're asking at this point in time is to sit down and work through all those things, just like we did with the hockey team, where we came in and we didn't know whether we could make an agreement work with them or not. And we're hopeful, but we don't know that at this point in time, that we can have a business plan that will be acceptable to the city council.
Could it be funded from the economic development money from the bond issue in 2007?
No.
Why not?
I don't think it falls within those parameters.
Oh, okay. What was the?
There's significant legal restrictions on what we can do with that money from the gold bond.
It's controlled by statute. There's a statute that says what you can spend the money for.
Okay. Any other comment or question on this part of the issue? Okay. Yeah, we have members of the local racing organization here. If you'd like to hear any more from them today, or perhaps on a future date, any inclination one way or the other? Okay. Well, why don't we just move forward then? Skip, item K.
This is a matter that was deferred from February the 23rd. This is an issue that I have taken some time to visit with staff. I have the applicant and I had a very lengthy conversation on yesterday evening. I have asked for an additional week. There is one of the projects that I would like to sit down and try to get a little bit more understanding in reference to the whys and the why nots. It relates to going forth with this project. And so staff came over yesterday, and we spent probably about 45 minutes together addressing these issues. And as it relates to some of the actual development in some of the areas in the projects, I wanted to have a little bit of additional time to address some issues with the applicant. And of course, that's my position on it.
Okay. And so where are you on it today?
I'm asking for additional week.
Okay. We have a couple of people that have signed up to speak. Anyone else on council want to speak on this item before we bring them up? Leonardo Smith. Good morning, Leonardo. We will need your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Leonardo Smith. I live at 1541 Northeast 42nd. I live in Northeast Oklahoma City, and I've always lived there. Good morning. My name is Leonardo Smith of LD Smith Properties. I'm here today to ask you to go ahead and vote on this issue up or down, and hopefully fund my project for affordable rental housing. I've been fortunate enough all my life to do work that I enjoy, and that work involves buying, selling, renovating, and making affordable housing attractive in Northeast Oklahoma City. We've created a project called the Urban Design Show House, in which it's been featured in major publications as well as the Daily Oklahoman and the Gazette, where we've taken boarded up abandoned housing and sold them to first-time home buyers. Where this is really an important endeavor to have first-time home buyers, and it makes our neighborhood strong. We also need a safe, attractive housing stock in the neighborhood for buyers as well as renters. My proposal calls for taking boarded-up abandoned houses, derelict houses, and turning them into houses and duplexes that we all would be proud to live in. So basically, I stand before you to ask you to vote up or down on this proposal. I have tons of information on this. I have actually hired an outside appraiser consultant to do the cost on the project itself, and I have all those laid out. And each one of the properties makes sense in the sense of how much the property's purchased for, how much it's going to cost to renovate, and then the end result of how much the property will be worth. And he does list comps, strong comps, as far as what the property will be worth at the end. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Okay. Sam?
Leonardo, as chairman of the committee that recommended the project to the full council, I'm inclined to think there's going to be favorable action on this. And I'm a little concerned as to why the week in itself, to just give Mr. Kelly whatever it is he needs assurance to get around this. I think we'd all be more pleased with this if we had the councilman's urging support, and I'm inclined to think we're going to get that, but what does the week do that's going to hurt the project at this point in time?
Well, at this point, what I've done is, in the first place, I've lost 3 sets of properties, or 3 pieces of properties, because of certain delays in the process. And right now, I am wrestling with realtors now because I'm out of contract. I've invested a great deal of time and money in this project, and as you know, there's nothing, or delays are very costly in the construction process. That's why a week really would matter. Quite honestly, I'll be happy to address any questions. As I said, I think one of my concerns about another week delay is that I don't really understand what another week will do. I've made myself available to everyone on the council. When it was delayed, I sent everyone an email and requested a meeting with you, and I said I would address any of your concerns. I do have information about the cost on all these projects in front of me today as well.
Leonardo, I think the week, not agreeing to the week delay could likely risk by asking up or down vote, could risk the project in itself. Unless this just knocks you out completely another week, I'd urge you to wait that week.
I will wait another week, but again, I want to put myself at any time you gentlemen are available. I will be happy to speak with you on the matter. We can go over cost. I've tons of information on the project, so thank you.
All right. Thanks, Leonardo. John Pettis.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm here in support of this item. This item started as a result of an RFP that was issued in August. It went before the committee, the Conservation Committee, in October, and I think again in maybe November. It has been several months since this has left the committee before it gets to this point. It has gone through staff. Staff has worked with the developer in this process. The concern that I have, number one, is the continued delay in this process. The RFP was followed. The developer has provided and made himself available for questions regarding this. To address Councilman Bowman's concern of one additional week, it has been several months. I think time is of the essence. There continues to be concerns whether rental property should be in Northeast Oklahoma City. The issue of boarded-up housing, the council at the last meeting renewed a contract for $500,000 to address boarded-up housing. It was ratified again this morning. I think addressing boarded-up housing, this would be a start in doing that. I see no reason for the continuance, personally, because enough time has taken place from the time it was approved by the Chairman's Committee to this point. Properties have to have options on them. You pay earnest money. Sometimes those properties are lost because of the time frame. They're sold to other people. I think it's unfair for anyone to follow the RFP to the letter, work with staff for approval, only to come before the council and get one delay, which I can't address, but to ask for another delay. I think it's sending a wrong signal to anyone who's following an RFP proposal and wants to do business with the city, and I think, it needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Okay. Skip, do you want to make a motion?
Yes, I make a motion that we move this for an additional week.
All right. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions on this item, and then we'll move on to the next one. All right, let's move on. Well, you want us to go ahead and vote on the deferral on this item?
Yes.
So this is item K, item 6K. We're voting on the deferral. Cast your votes. That item is deferred 1 week. All right, continuing with the discussion on the consent docket. Pat, item O.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is involves a street widening project, May Avenue from 178th to 192nd. And this is a change in the engineering contract to provide for some additional storm sewer work and some other adjustments in the project. And my question was, my constituents are very concerned about this project. They're looking forward to its completion. And my question is, will this change any of the construction dates or push back our completion date in any way?
I believe this is a project that we have scheduled either for 2011 or 2012, and no, this should not delay that date at all.
So we've got plenty of time to accommodate the changes and get that construction.
This is just to, it appeared that we were going to have to close a portion of the street in order to construct the storm sewer the way it was originally designed, and we've asked the engineer to look at it another way. in order to keep the street open during construction.
Okay, so this is maybe an improvement in terms of what our constituents see out there.
That's the way I'd look at it, yes.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we vote AG separately. I move to vote it separately.
Ken, let me pull it and look at it myself.
This is left over from our last week's meeting. We postponed this 1 week in order to give the council members time to investigate the project.
Okay.
We voted on it separately, or it was pulled out to be voted on separately last time, and it was deferred 1 week.
Got it. I remember now. This is the I-2E issue. So we have a motion and a second to vote on item AG separately. Everybody ready? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. All right, Gary, you want to discuss item L?
Well, just a comment. This is going out for bids on the remodel at Fire Station Number 7 in Capitol Hill. If you remember, there was some erroneous and some misleading information put out that we were going to abandon that station, and we never intended to abandon that station. It's got some very significant structural problems, and I just wanted to point out that we're moving forward to going out for bid and get that station open back up again.
All right. And Sam, AM.
Thank you, Mayor. This has to do with the parkland escrow funds for public boat. It has nothing to do with the use of the funds for the public boat ramp, just some information. City Manager, if you would, please. Are these the funds, this parkland escrow fund, from the American Cultural Center, Indian Culture Center park funds that have been put in surplus?
I don't think so, but let me check and get back to you. They have some funds from various sources, from some disposed parks over the years and some other properties.
I just want, if
Wendell, I think, is walking in and can probably answer that for us. Mr. Wisenhunt?
These funds aren't specific to any sale, but they are funds from in an account from the sale of parkland.
where the cultural center sits today?
Well,
or just general park surplus?
Those funds would be in that account, yes, sir.
What's the size of that account that can be used for river improvements?
I think you're asking what the balance is?
Yes.
I'd have to check. I'd be glad to do that and let you know.
But it isn't specifically for river improvements. It's for park improvements, correct?
Yes, sir.
But we have a specific fund for river improvements from the sale or transfer of the American Cultural Center, do we not?
There are funds in an account from that, yes, sir. But I feel I'm not answering your question.
But that is not these funds?
Not necessarily, no. No, it is not these funds.
Here's where I'm going. It's another whole direction, so I don't need to get into it. But there are opportunities along the river that the river development is looking at all the time. But there are things such as corrections to the existing trail system that could be improved, some capital cost. And I'm just inquiring to see if that park fund, that park trust fund, is that kind of reserve that could be used for such expenses.
It is, sir. And the funds that we're speaking about here are not the funds. I understand your question now. Are not the funds from that sale. Okay. No, sir.
Thank
you. Okay. Any other comments or questions on the consent docket? Well, we have a motion and a second. Looks like we're ready to vote. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Hey, G, we did.
The motion was to vote on it separately, so now we need to.
I thought we did.
Yeah, but now we need he's moving for approval of the resolution.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Okay. Voting on AG. Yes, Larry?
A brief comment, if I could. Since we pulled this last week, and I appreciate the council doing that, no one has come forward to me to give me any more assurance that there would be any primary job creation resulting from the allocation of this $400,000 to fund the administrative services for a, quote, incubator, unquote, type of operation, consulting type. The monies will go for salaries and administrative costs for that function, not to create primary jobs. So I'm have to vote no. I don't think it's a good expenditure, even though it's totally within the context of the overall gold bonds, one of the portions of it. It does not lead to the immediate creation of primary jobs, so I'm going to have to respectfully vote no.
All right, cast your votes. And it passes by a count of 6-2. Thank you. We're on to the concurrence docket. Okay, it looks like there are 12 items. We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the concurrence docket? All right, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We're on to item 8. These are items that require a separate vote. We start with a zoning case in Ward 1. The address is 4131 Northwest 23rd Street. It's currently R1 single family. It would become a simplified plan unit development. Gary?
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody here to speak on it? As I understand it, this is has been used this way for a while, and it's bringing it into conformance under a SPUD. Is that correct, Bob? And the TEs have all been approved or agreed to, Bob? Okay, I'll move the item.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions on item 8A? All right, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We're on to item 8B. This is a zoning case in Ward 8.
Your Honor, it's deferred to March 16th.
I stand corrected. Item 8B has already been deferred to March 16th. We're on to item 8C. This is to close close the east 3 feet of the platted 15-foot north of the utility easement in Ward 4. You okay with this, Pete?
I am. I move approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 8C, and it passes unanimously. Item 8D is from the Traffic Commission. This is in Ward 7. Skip, you okay with it?
Yes.
All right, you want to make a motion?
Move it.
All right, cast your votes on 8D. Passed unanimously. Item 8E is an issue we've already passed from Ward 6, but we're going to go back and add the emergency.
Move the emergency.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 8E. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. And item 8F, I understand we have a presentation from the Planning Department.
Just briefly on this ordinance, this is to bring our zoning ordinance in conformance with the building code. Basically, anytime someone changes a use in a building, they need to apply for a permit. An example would be if you had an industrial warehouse and you wanted to convert it to a commercial use such as a restaurant, you'd need to get a permit because the parking requirements are different in industrial and commercial districts, and we need the opportunity to check that. It's already in the building code, but we're pulling that out and adding it to the zoning ordinance. It gives us some abilities if we have to enforce a violation.
All right. Any comments or questions, Gary?
Well, I just understand it that we're catching those that if it didn't require a zoning change and they weren't remodeling, then there wasn't ever a permit that kicked in. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Right.
So now we're clearing it up so that even if they're changing just the use and not remodeling the building and not rezoning it, it still has to get a permit to be in compliance.
There's a whole series of building code issues that would be addressed, just a few of zoning issues, but we want it in both documents.
All right.
A question, Your Honor. Have we had any input from the public in terms of being either in favor of or opposed to this?
This was brought to the Planning Commission for their, they looked at it, but it's already in the building code, so if someone did change use, we could go out, a building inspector could go out and make the same notification.
So essentially this is a housekeeping issue.
Right.
All right, ready to vote on 8F. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8G is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8G? Yes, come on up. you all, you're on H. Okay, that'll be next. Anybody here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8G? All right, how about a motion then? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Now we're on 8H. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8H? Good morning, and we will need your name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. My name is Wardis White, and my address is P.O. Box 19976.
Okay, I couldn't quite hear the address of the property.
Wardis White, and the address of the property is 3133 Southwest 25th.
All right, that's in Ward 6. Councilwoman Salyer is not here this morning, but perhaps we can help you with it. What seems to be the problem?
My name is Terry Bennett, and
Terry, you might have to talk right in front of that microphone. We're not going to be able to hear you.
My name is Terry Bennett, and the problem with this property is they're in the neighborhood. There's a lot of wannabe gang members, if you will. They've vandalized the place on many occasions. It's been boarded up twice. They took the boards off. It's another guy in the neighborhood who wants the property. I paid him $20 to set it on fire. Fire marshals investigated it, arrested the guy. Don't have a case. The guy that he paid the money to, they have a warrant out for his arrest, can't catch him. The place is continuously vandalized. We went through the Oklahoma City Rehabilitation Program. It's been approved. The wheels are rolling on this thing. It's going to become a beautiful 3-bedroom home when they finish with it. It was boarded up again. They came back and took the boards off. They dumped the trash. They come by and throw their furniture. It's just nothing but continuous harassment. But I think as soon as the guys get started on the rehabilitation, I think that will solve the problem.
So you intend to not tear this down? You intend to try and rehabilitate it?
Well, they're going to tear a portion of it down, and it's through the Oklahoma City Rehabilitation Program. Mm-hmm. They're going to tear a portion of it down and build it up and make it a beautiful site for Oklahoma.
And you're the property owner of this?
She is.
She is? Well, you understand our situation. We have neighbors and neighborhoods we have to look after, and for this property to be in this condition is not fair to the rest of the neighborhood. So we're concerned about how quickly you're going to be able to turn this around and work through the process.
The neighbors?
Yeah, well, the neighbors, believe it or not, are the ones that are causing the problems and calling in complaining. Okay? The neighbors, their children, are the ones causing the problems, and you don't have to take my word or her word for it. You can talk to the fire marshals who did the investigations on this thing, the problem that they had with the neighbors. So it's a big problem, but Oklahoma City is going to help us make this
why can't you start it? That's the problem. Leaving it set like this is not acceptable. It doesn't matter who causes it.
Well, it was boarded. We've been told to board it up.
Why can't you get started? Just concentrate on that question. Why can't you get started fixing it?
Well, we don't have the funds to get started fixing it. This is why we have went through your program. And
when can you get the funds? How long is that going to take?
Well, it's dependent on the guys right around the corner here on Main Street.
The point is it can't sit like this. You've got to do something. Just the fact that somebody sets it on fire, that's sad, but that's not going to
I don't have an exact date to give you, but it's been approved.
Within a year?
Hopefully within next
Within a month?
Yes. A couple of months. You don't think so?
Well, it doesn't. How soon do you start boarding it up yourself, Charles? How quick does that start?
We'll board it up probably within a little over a week. They have been accepting the rehab, but their estimates on start time are no sooner than 3 months and probably up to 6 months before they'll even start.
So it's got to be.
So it's got to be boarded up.
It's got to be boarded up.
Well,
I want to ask the question. When did this property get approved for rehab under the city's program?
It was approved 3/4 of this year. It was just approved.
Just like this?
Because it meets their criteria for the low income. They'll rehab it and remodel it, but like I said, they're probably 3 to 6 months out on even starting.
Okay, so the issue today is we've got to have it boarded up.
Security of it, right.
Yeah, so you understand this property's got to be secured, and if you can't get started on that, then the city will have to do it.
We'll get it done again.
Was anybody living in the property when it was approved for the rehab?
Nobody's living in it at this time because of the burnout.
I know, but who lives in the property? Are we talking about rehabbing this just for somebody to rent?
No.
Who lives there?
She will live there.
It has to be owner occupied.
Who was living there when it was burned?
We was in the process of fixing the house before it was burned.
But was it occupied as a residence, and you was the owner? You were living there?
Well, it was going through some rehabilitation work, as the guy suggests, and the vandalism just kept coming, setbacks.
Well, here's my advice. Get to work very quickly on securing the property and stay in touch with Charles, and we won't have to do anything. And then good luck on the next process of trying to turn that property around, and we wish you good luck.
Thank you.
All right? Any other comments or questions on anything regarding 8H, unsecured structures? All right, how about a motion then? Cast your votes on 8H. Passed unanimously. Item 8I is 3 separate revocable permits to hold events. We'll vote on these separately. The first has to do with next week's NCAA Regional Championships at the Ford Center. It's in Ward 7. Skip, do you want to make a motion on this one?
To move it.
Second.
All right. Cast your votes on the Street Fest for the NCAA. Passed unanimously. Item 8I2 is a St. Patrick's Day event that will take place in Ward 6 on March 17th and 18th.
Move it.
Looks like it's in Midtown. Okay, we have a motion. Have a second? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. And then item 8.3 is for the St. Patrick's Day Parade to be held in downtown and Bricktown through Ward 6 and Ward 7. Skip, how about a motion on that? Second. All right, cast your votes on item 8I3, and it passes unanimously. Item 8J has to do with our GO bond administrative procedures. I understand we have a short presentation.
Good morning. We just wanted to briefly go over the changes that are being proposed here. Really, when we look at this, the bond administrative procedures haven't been approved since 2001. That was the last time they were updated and approved. And we wanted to bring these kinds of procedures back to the council periodically so that the current council has reviewed and approved them. We aren't proposing any changes in the current processes that are in place. It's just basically adding some definitions and providing some additional clarification on the types of allocations that are made within the bond funds. Basically, the bond administrative procedures provide for guidance on the routine processes of administering the bond funds. The primary focus is on the allocation of bond funds. Every project that is approved for bonds for use in the GO bond program is either approved as a listed project when we originally bring the bond authorization through and council approves a resolution on each of the projects, or it's an unlisted project that's identified later on. There's unlisted funds in each proposition that are available for contingency, basically, in the event that projects arise that were not anticipated previously, or where we have listed projects that the costs are more than what was anticipated. We can use these unlisted bond funds, the city can use these unlisted bond funds to identify new projects. If new projects are identified that are needed, those projects then go to the bond advisory committee that reviews those projects and makes recommendation to the city council. The council then has to approve the project. So every project, whether listed or unlisted, is ultimately approved by the city council. These procedures guide how we allocate the funds, how we move the funds within our administrative system, our financial system, in order to provide an additional level of control to ensure that we are following the requirements of the bond authorization and the contracts and the projects that are approved by the City Council. So there's different levels of authorization and approval that are required on different levels of allocation. And that's basically what these procedures are doing, are just setting forth how we're going to routinely manage and administer these contracts, these funds. It does not get into the specific management of a project that's managed through the Public Works Department, but does handle how we administer the funds. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about the procedures.
Okay, we're discussing on item 8J. Any comments or questions for Craig? All right.
Thank you.
Looks like we're good to go. Then how about a motion? Cast your votes on 8J. Passed unanimously. Item 8K. Kenny, you want to give us an update on this?
Yes, and I have Tina Hughes here, too, who's going to work on this case along with Susan Randall. This is a case where the city is maintaining and reconstructing its drainage channel, and there are some pipelines in there pursuant to a subsequent easement to the city's easement. The city's easement is prior to that, and the company that owns the pipelines is refusing to move those pipelines so the city can maintain and reconstruct its easements. I don't know if Tina wanted to add anything or...
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the basis of their refusal? Because they have an easement, private easement through there?
We have not talked to them directly. I understand the city engineer has talked to them directly, and they're just refusing to move it at their expense.
They think that since the need to move it is precipitated by our drainage project, and since they have an easement document, that the city should be paying the costs of moving their pipeline, but that it's not the way the law is set up, and our easement language makes it superior to theirs. In fact, their easement documents even say that they are subject to any pre-existing easements. So.
And the easement the city had prior to the pipeline company was on file on a record at the county, so there was...
Yes, sir. And we provided them with copies of that documentation as well.
All right. How about a motion? Any comments or questions on this item? We're voting on 8K. All right. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8L. I understand we do need executive session. All right. How about a motion to go to executive session with this item? Cast your votes. Item is moved. Item 8M. I understand we do need executive session. All right. Cast your votes. Item moves to executive session. Item 8N. I understand we do need executive session.
Yes.
All right. Cast your votes on that, and it's moved as well. We're on item 8O. These are claims recommended for denial. I'll bring the council's attention to item O1A. Reba Carter is here. Reba, you want to come forward again for me to remind the council this is the issue with the manhole cover, and Reba's car was ultimately damaged, and her claim has been denied. It appears there is a dispute of facts and there is discretion from council. The staff does believe that the manhole cover was within the acceptable limits of what is typical and expected. Reba's contention is that the bottom of her car did bottom out when it went over the manhole cover, and she provided pictures with us. And so this item is back before council, and council does have discretion to pay this item within state law because there is a dispute of facts. So it's basically in our hands at this point. I'll leave it there. Any questions for Reba or a motion to pay or to not pay?
And we have additional photos if the council would like to see those.
Okay.
Your Honor, I might make a comment. I went by and looked at it personally, and it appears to me so extremely unlikely that the manhole does extend slightly above the street. But I believe it's very unlikely that if the automobile, unless the automobile had, the shocks were gone, or you were driving at an excessive rate of speed some way, that I just think it's extremely unlikely that the city's responsible for it. And as a result, I'm going to vote no.
Sir?
Yeah, Reba, go ahead.
Pictures from my
Do you have pictures
camera,
for us to see?
Because I found out
Okay.
but it shows right where I hit it at.
Mayor, I looked at it too, and if I have the right location, ma'am, is it just a half a block from Walker?
It's just right off of Walker. They worked on all the manhole covers. When I went back after I was here the last time,
But
they had
it's
worked on
just off Walker.
Yes, just right off of Walker.
In the intersection.
Yeah.
It's almost in the
The
intersection.
one that's like a half a block or a block up, they had worked on.
You know, granted, there's a little rise in the street. As Mr. White says, the differential in the lid cover in the street really was minimal. Granted, there's a little rise in the street, but you'd have to be going at a rate of speed to bottom that. I don't understand when it's that close to the. I don't see it happening at that particular location. You couldn't be going 15 miles an hour. This is not on Walker. I thought initially this was a Walker manhole.
No, it's on 12th. You're turning right off of Walker.
I'd have to agree with Mr. White having taken a look at it.
Larry?
Is it possible, Mr. Couch, to have Dennis come out here and make a comment about whether this is, quote, in spec or out of spec?
Sure. I know Mr. Clowers has personally been down to see it, so we can have him come in.
My comment is that every time I pass a manhole, and I've paid more attention since this was before us a couple of weeks ago, and I can't tell the difference between one or the other. They all are pretty much the same in reference to the setting, in the cement. And if this is the case, then every motorist in this city has a claim against the city. And I'm like Councilman White, if there had to have been something that was a pre-existing damage to the vehicle, and to say that just driving over this caused it to bottom out, I just have a serious problem with us sitting here and even addressing something this minute in reference to the damage of a vehicle. We don't have a mechanic that has got a report that states that, based upon his direct evaluation and repairs of the vehicle, that those repairs was caused because your vehicle drove over a particular manhole, this one in particular. And I just don't understand why we would even be wasting time with this, because if you drive over the city of Oklahoma City, I'm sure this is not the first manhole that your car has traveled over.
Well, no, but I mean, this thing is, there's holes and grits in there.
Well, there's holes in the streets. But well, is Freddie's Tires here to say that the reason why your car was damaged was because of this? No, they didn't do the work on the car. Who did the work on the car? And did your friend bring in a report stating that the damage that he repaired was because of this? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Brian.
There's two different issues, and I can't figure out which one we're arguing about. Are we arguing about that it did or did not hit the manhole cover, or are we arguing that, yes, it did hit the manhole cover, but we're not responsible? Because I look at the pictures, and this picture, I don't know who took it, but there's new asphalt in front of this manhole cover, right? Well, if there's nothing wrong, why don't we go out there and put asphalt down?
Because there was a gap there. We don't believe the gap was significant enough to cause the damage, but there was a little bit of gap there that we filled in. We didn't actually lower the manhole cover.
Well, no, but you created an inclined plane so that if something did hit it, it would go over it as opposed to catching on the lip. And I mean, why would we do that if there was nothing wrong?
We're not saying there was nothing wrong. We're saying that the change in the elevation was not significant enough to cause the damage.
But we fixed it anyway.
We didn't change the elevation of the manhole cover.
But you created an inclined plane up to the lip of the manhole cover.
We put some asphalt. Yes, we did.
Okay.
But if you look at the manhole cover, Brian, it's where that was hit. You couldn't have hit the. I think she hit it. So first of all, my argument is not that she hit it. My argument is that her vehicle was so low that we can't put manhole covers any lower than we were within the limits of it. The small little places about this big around that you're seeing there on the thing, if her tire went over that, which would have elevated her over the manhole cover, she wouldn't have hit it because the center of her car is where she hit it. And that would have been a couple of 3 feet to the right or to the left, depending on which tire went over it. If she straddled the manhole cover, that little bit that was asphalt that was put in there would not have changed at all whether she hit it or not. You just almost have to look at it to see it that way. But I think that's, I kind of agree with Skip. We're gagging at a gnat here, but we probably saved money by saying it was okay and paying it and going on down the road. But I think the precedent is such that this is not one that meets that criteria. And as a general rule, I'm one that says we probably ought to pay all those in recognition that we have potholes all over town. But that's not consistent with what the municipal council says the law is. So,
well, how about a motion on 8-0?
Could we hear from Dennis just a minute?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Dennis. You went out and looked at Reva's situation?
I went out there I believe at lunchtime that day, was it 2 weeks ago? Yes. And it did not appear to me that it was out of the ordinary, I guess, or beyond the limits of what we would consider normal.
Okay. Reba, you want a final word before we vote?
I went out right after that, too. They had repaired it. After I called, they went out that day, put up cones, and then they repaired it. My car, it's one of those built with the engine that sits in there sideways. The transmission's more on the driver's side. I didn't have to straddle anything. But I had to go, I'm out all of that money, unemployed, and trying to survive, and that is what happened. The car does sit low to the ground. It's one of those little Cavaliers, but you didn't have to straddle it. The transmission, and it ripped a hole in the oil pan also.
Right.
It's a sideways engine, and the transmission is more on the driver's side than it is it's not in the middle like on the older cars. And there was a big old gap in there, and they repaired it when I went back out there.
I understand.
They had repaired all of them on that street.
Well, I do think the council is sympathetic to your situation. Whether or not we feel the city is obligated to pay or should pay, it may be a separate issue. We still need a motion on all of these items, or a motion to pull this item and have it voted on separately. But
motion to pull it.
Okay. Well, these are claims recommended for denial, so a motion to pass would be a claims recommended for denial. All right. We have a motion and a second. All right. Cast your votes. And it passed unanimously.
So it was denied?
It was denied.
See?
Item 9 is claims recommended for approval. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under item 9? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 10 begins items from council. Councilman Ryan has a resolution.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a resolution that recognizes the very difficult time the city is going to have from a budget standpoint in the upcoming fiscal year. And it provides an opportunity for, I think, the city council to take a leadership role in trying to deal with this problem. I'll agree to the comments that have been made to me that it is symbolic, but I think symbolism is sometimes important. I think this gives us an opportunity to participate, and I think in a budget situation it's important for everybody to participate. We cannot in any kind of reasonable way have equal impact on everybody, but we can have equal participation from all the people. And this is a method whereby on a strictly voluntary basis, I'm asking the city council and the mayor to voluntarily return 5% of their salary during the upcoming fiscal year to the city clerk.
You know, Pat, my problem is that by stating it's 5%, it seems to imply that we already know how our budget's going to be, and that's going to be the offer that we make to our employees. And I wonder if we couldn't just change it to meet whatever our negotiation ultimately winds up, so it does reflect the current economic situation that we, at this point, we don't know what it is.
Well, that's certainly an alternative, but I think we send a stronger message by adopting a number right now as to reinforce what I think is important, that the city council take a leadership role in dealing with this issue.
Well,
and not waiting to see what happens, but I'm suggesting that 5% is appropriate for the city council. I'm not suggesting that 5% be the target for the negotiations with city employees. That's going to be developed in concert with a number of options to impact a budget shortfall.
Well, I just think ultimately the number could be lower, it could be higher, and that there's no reason to put a number in there. But you seem pretty intent on having the number in there.
I think it's important to have a number in there. I really do. And the 5%, if somebody wanted to suggest a bigger number, well, I would be willing to go along with that. A smaller number, I don't think, has any real significant impact.
Pat, if the intent is symbolic, as you suggested, and we agree to that, provided we do, subject to the negotiations with our city employees at that time to set it, I don't see how that changes our intent. I mean, our intent is there. It is symbolic. It's not a matter of backing off it. It just...
I think adopting a number is a clear indication that the city council is willing to take a leadership role issue. And I think a wait-and-see attitude diminishes that impact slightly.
Well, there's two things we could do. We could have an amendment that would change the number to some other language. We could defer the item till we know closer to the budget situation what the number is going to be, or we can vote on Councilman Ryan's resolution as is.
And it is a resolution, Your Honor, and any time the city council wishes to change the number, we certainly have that option. If indeed we are really fortunate and our budget situation improves during the upcoming fiscal year, we can rescind this resolution. So it is not going to be something that is cast in concrete. And I think it's important to take a step today, a positive step, to show that the council is committed to a leadership role in addressing the budget issues that we have to address in the upcoming fiscal year.
All right. Brian, then Skip.
I think the votes that we take out here, the things that we prioritize, the things that we think are important that get priority in these tough times are much more important than me giving $50 to the city of Oklahoma City. I'm willing to do it. I've taken a huge pay cut in my job that allows me to do this job. So I do feel the pain of the city. But for the mayor to give $100 a month or the council to get $50 a month, I think is much less symbolic than the actions that we take out here every week and the way we prioritize and the things that we think are important. So I'm willing to, if Pat wants to go ahead and put it forward, I'm willing to support it, but I think that it's a pittance to the things that we do out here every week.
Yes, Skip?
No question about that, but I think the impact is that we, as city council members, will be impacted by the budget cuts. And what we do for others is important, certainly, but I think it is equally important that we, use President Clinton's word, share the pain in some slight way. Now, the pain is going to be different on each of us, some more significant than others, and I realize that. But I think it's important that we, at this point in time, make a positive, affirmative statement that we are going to adopt a leadership role in dealing with it.
All right. Skip?
You know, my only concern is, first of all, I don't like the fact that we don't set our salary, first of all. Salary is set by charter, and I don't think we should be dealing in any way with changing of what is received based upon what the charter mandates, and the only change of your income has to be by a vote of the people. My other concern is that, when we talk about, budgeting, to me, any economist would look at it from a point of view of saying that, well, how much are you going to save and what can you do with that you're saving? How much can we really do with each one of us giving $50 a month to the city of Oklahoma City, and it's not being earmarked for any one particular project or any one particular service? I just find that, doing these symbolic statements of anything, when it makes really no difference in reference to the quality of life, if my salary is going to assure, or my participation in giving any portion of my salary is going to assure another person of having a job for the continuation of the year, then I could probably consider that. But if it's not going to change anyone's status as far as maintaining their job or being furloughed or any budget, in their department being directly affected or saved, then what's the purpose of it?
Well, if we gave back all our salaries, then we might do that.
Well, why don't you just say, why don't you make a motion, then that we everybody give up their salary and then save the job of one of those persons that's out there on the street department and make it earmarked specifically for one of those persons that really makes a difference in the quality of life of people. I just don't like playing games with issues that, first of all, we're not mandated to even change or set, and just to say that you have in a resolution, then, the things that I think that could make a real difference in the quality of life of individuals for the next budgetary year, this is not one of them. We've given up our travel. If you could tell me how much money was budgeted from travel from last year, and that all of us now has been, we have been frozen in reference to travel. So how much is that travel going to make a difference in somebody's job over in Public Works Department, or one of these individuals that's out there doing the work when the ice is keeping everybody else from moving, but they got to be out there doing the work to make it possible for somebody else's, convenience. To me, I can support, it's just like, you asked us to give to United Way, we give to United Way. You asked me to give to a particular, nonprofit organization that the city feels strong about supporting, I give to that. But I could see something in reference to those programs making a difference in somebody's life every day. But just to say that we're going to do this as a symbolic statement, I just don't see where it makes any difference.
It's important, Skip, that everybody participate. We can't, in good conscience, ask our employees to take a cut in pay or be laid off if we're not willing to join in the effort.
First of all, I didn't create the budgetary system in this city, and I didn't cause the sales tax to go down in this city. I didn't do that. So I'm not personally responsible for the fact that the budget is what it is, and I'm not personally responsible for whether or not we get sales up or down. That's not my responsibility.
Yes, it is. When you came on the
No, it's not. It's not my responsibility to say how much people spend in this city.
Your responsibility is to deal with budget issues, and we are facing a budget issue.
And that's the budget issue, but it is not my responsibility to say how much people should spend in this city and when they should spend.
Nobody's asking you to do that.
Well, that's what you just said.
I'm asking for, and this is voluntary. If you choose not to participate, that's up to you.
Okay. You need to be careful about how you point at issues as to what I'm responsible for. I know what my responsibilities are.
Your responsibilities are to deal with the budget issue.
I think you both made your point. Sam? Do you have anything to say? I thought you had your pencil up in the air.
I wondered after that $450 discussion with the hubcap at the bottom of the car, Mr. Kelly, how far are we going to go with this discussion on our $50? I just think we ought to get on with it.
Okay. Gary?
Well, I'm going to support it, too, and I think it goes back to it's just the understanding that we support and are willing to do the same thing we're going to ask employees to do. Yeah, we canceled our travel for council. That was very small, very minuscule and compared to the overall budget. No, it didn't save enough money, but it was the concept that all the other city employees canceled their travel too, and it was appropriate. And I said during that discussion, don't think the city employees don't realize if they're being asked to do something, it's appropriate that anybody that draws money from the city coffers should be asked or should be told to do the same thing. And this is the same thing here as I see it. If the city employees are not the cause for the tax revenue being down, and it's not their fault that we're going to be in drastic budget times next year, and I just think it's, if we're going to continue discussions that are going to affect city employees either in their salary or in their jobs in their entirety, that this council owes it to them to say we're willing to step up and do the same thing you are. It's minuscule when you talk about the size of this budget, but it still shows them that we are willing to do the same thing we're going to be asking them to do.
All right. Any other comments before we ask Pat for a motion? All right, Pat, how about a motion?
Motion is to move the adoption of the resolution as presented to the council.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? Cast your votes, and it passes by a count of 7-1.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Council.
Gary, you want to start a rotation here around the council horseshoe? Sam?
Two items, Mayor. Just to bring the council up to date a bit on the intermodal hub study, progress is being made. We should have by the end of this month an agreement for us to consider between ACOG, ourselves, and COPTA in proceeding with a contract for our intermodal study. We've had a couple of meetings on just developing the scope of services for this contract that we're going to put out. The primary goal of the hub study is to recommend the best location for a new intermodal transportation hub for the city to serve both the area's short and long-range needs. We're doing this without any predetermined location as to where it should be. And just in the discussion and the little publicity that we've had on this hub study, several national transportation outfits have contacted ACOG about their interest. So we're not going to have any shortage of interest or applications to ask to bid on this contract. And we're going to have national firms at a time when they're looking for business and at a time that we're going to get the best price we probably ever could. So it's the scope of service is extensive. There's been a lot of work on it. I think we've got the product in place now that we'll see in a couple of weeks back here for our consideration and approval so that we can move forward with the idea of putting bids out and by May selecting a national firm to begin the undertaking of this effort. So appreciate the work that's been going on at ACOG.
Well, thanks for serving on that.
Secondly, Mayor, most of us had the opportunity to hear the presentation by Urban Land Institute last week, either at the Skirvin Hotel or the packed chambers here. And I and several were here for the last Friday presentation. And I just kind of like this through a lot of it. It was extremely, I thought, bold, really challenging look at what we propose to do downtown. It wasn't a lot of the double talk kind of stuff that I think we too often get from consultants and come in, and these folks were all coming in on their own time as a part of the Urban Land Institute led by the mayor of Indianapolis. I just thought we got some challenges with respect to our conceptual ideas and conceptual plans that I really think before we do anything as we move forward in our planning process, that we take a look at their in a couple of weeks, I guess we'll get them in writing, their very specific recommendations, bold recommendations that they are. And we really don't just put them aside as we're moving forward with our own planning. But I think until we rebut some of the big challenges that they've made, we really need to wrestle with them as we move forward. I just think they're saying some things that otherwise wouldn't be said. Things like with regards to the convention center location, that boulevard. I mean, those are some bold recommendations. I think that boulevard, that we're looking at something almost twice the width of what they're recommending, and with some very good rationale as to why. So my point in saying all this is I hope we really struggle first with those recommendations for their big issues, and if we need to, rebut them and then move forward, but just don't put them aside as we walk down our path.
I think we intend to take them very seriously, but I think many of the issues they brought up will be dealt with on their own time frame. In other words, the boulevard issue is very, very important, but that's going to have one timeline that needs to be addressed. The convention center will have the other, and as the council is very aware, we're in the process right now of getting the advisory board in place. And I'm very hesitant to start making any sort of decisions or leanings until we get that advisory board in place. I think it would upset the process. Yeah, Larry?
Thank you, Your Honor. Last week I neglected to give some praise to the Friends of Northwest 10th Street, to the businesses along 10th Street, and to the neighbors of Corbin Park who came together and held a function to try to revitalize their neighborhood association. One of the businesses paid for the meals, and it was an extremely heartwarming thing to see the neighbors and the businesses coming together with the vision to improve a very challenged area of our city. And then I'd like also to encourage the neighbors of Musgrave Pennington. They have a neighborhood meeting coming up next Monday night at 7 o'clock, and I hope to see all the neighbors there at the St. Pat's Church at 7 o'clock. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Pete?
A couple of things. Congratulations on your reelection. I would have never thought to hold my watch party at a Thunder game, but it's a great idea. It's probably the biggest watch party I ever saw. Secondly, though, in conjunction with what Sam said, the site selection, and I fully agree that that is a matter for the advisory committee. But I think the location of the convention center is obviously job one with regard to that committee. The hub study that Sam's talking about is really going to be very difficult to pull that hub study off for the transit without knowing where the convention center is going to be. I did hear something in the Friday thing that I thought was different, and I think I heard it one way, and I think others may have heard it differently. It was my understanding that they recommended that the location of the convention center be the top priority. Others, I think, heard that the building of the convention center be the top priority. And I fully am in agreement with the first and disagree heartily with the latter. But I think that's something that I got from it. There were some really great ideas. I mean, the narrowing of the boulevard, I agree with Sam's great idea. The idea of putting a little notch in the boulevard that'll kind of highlight the center of the park we're talking about to really bring some focus to that park. I think those are really, really quality thoughts, and lots of others too. But the siting of the convention center to me is just absolutely imperative to everything else we're doing. I mean, I think until we decide what we're going to do with that huge project, not build it, but until we decide what we're going to do with it, I don't think the park plan doesn't go forward well, the convention center plan doesn't go forward at all, the hub plan really can't go forward without it. I think that siting that facility is absolutely job one, and I'm hopeful that that'll be the charge given to the Mayor's Advisory Council when they're finally established.
Okay. Brian? All right. Skip?
Yeah, I got two issues. Number one of the presentations that we saw here today in reference to one of these unsecured structures, if we are going to allow money to be used for the conditions that we saw on this screen in reference to one of these projects, if that is not a budget waste of money, I don't know what is. And I want to make sure that we start having a more open meeting with staff in reference to these funds and the way these projects are being financed and who actually owns the projects. I'm just concerned about, some of these monies that you would think that people who really and have applied that have the real need in an area that is trying to revitalize itself, to look at some of those properties and to know that we're spending money from the federal government or any funds from the city to try to rehabilitate some of that junk. I just thought that was just totally offensive. And that's, to me, is a real budget issue. And the other thing that I want to point out is we have some taxi cab drivers that drive for yellow cab that have absolutely no respect for individuals' property. I was on 106th and Military this past weekend. There were 3 taxi cabs parked, lined up on a street. No one on that street had called a taxi cab at all. I called Yellow Cab, asked them would they move the cars. They said it wasn't nothing they could do. Now, if these are companies that we're doing business with, taxi cabs should have some parking zone where they park their taxis for service. And if those individuals live at a particular residence and they got 4 taxi cabs drivers there need to be some place that they should park those cars other than impeding upon the free flow of traffic in those individuals' neighborhoods and communities.
Okay. Pat?
My other concern is the Urban Land Institute. I didn't feel like that the conference that we were called for to present ideas and to be shown anything was really a professional setting for the amount of money and the number of projects, and I don't know how much money was paid to this company, but to have me to come over to a meeting and in 35 or 40 minutes to shuffle me out, and then to talk about that you're talking about redesigning a major portion of this city with these funds, I just wasn't that impressed with it. I wasn't impressed with it at all. And I'm not going to come down here, if we're the council, and if the duties and the obligations that we are here for, then we should have had more time in reference to the presentation than we were given as individual members of the council. I don't appreciate being told to go over to the Skirvin Hotel, and I go over there, and the people who's giving the presentation gets up and tells me that they got to go to another meeting. I just think there was a short change in reference to the professionalism that was owed to this council, and I don't know if anybody else got more time with them than the 4 that I was with. But I just didn't think it was a very, professionally engaged presentation to the individual council members. Now, I don't know if anybody else got a different timing than I did, but I was not impressed at all.
All right. Pat?
I've probably said too much already, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. City manager reports?
We've got a report by Chief Bryant, but as he's coming up, I want to make a couple of comments on ULI. It was a very interesting process, had some great professionals in town. I was really impressed by the number of people that were engaged in the process, the number of people that showed up to talk to them, and the number of people that showed up at City Hall that filled the chambers, filled the lobby outside, filled the back conference rooms and such. And it was good to have that number of people engaged. And they did make some bold comments, Councilman Bowman, that I think will certainly take into consideration if we go forward. But one of the things I think they did, they spent a lot of time validating what we're already doing. And although they had some specific recommendations and done some of the things, I think they also pointed out that we're doing a lot of things right here in Oklahoma City. And I thought that was a positive part of the process also. Chief Bryant?
Appreciate it. Mayor, members of council, appreciate the opportunity to come here this morning and give you an update on where we're at, the status of our aerial apparatus fleet. I know we've had a couple of discussions, and there's been a report issued over the past couple of months and some of the issues and challenges that we face with these pieces of equipment. So that's what we're going to try and address for you here today. Just as a little background and to kind of bring you up to speed, we have 13 stations in the city that house aerial fire apparatus, and you can see by the map the locations there. And although they're kind of concentrated more toward the core of the city, they absolutely respond to everywhere in the city. Aerial apparatus respond to all structure fires. They respond to all vehicle accidents. They do the bulk of our rescue work on the department. They carry the necessary heavy tools and equipment to do rescue work, including the hydraulic tools that we use in vehicle accidents, what people refer to as the jaws of life. They do the ventilation work on structure fires. Forcible entry into structures that when we go to them for whatever reason. And again, one of the primary uses of them is on large fires. You've seen them with their ladders extended and conveying water through large elevated master streams. So and again, these are the stations that house those aerial apparatus. There's currently 13 frontline aerial apparatus, and we have 4 in reserve, so a total of 17 vehicles. As far as over the past few years with our replacement program specific to aerial ladders, in 2006 we purchased a 100-foot E1 aerial apparatus. In 2008 we entered into a contract with E1 to refurbish 4 of the aerial apparatus. Again, that was a program where we took those pieces of equipment. The ladder itself is made out of aluminum, and again, that's probably the most expensive part of that piece of equipment. So this program allowed us to reuse that ladder and saved us a tremendous amount of expense on that unit by basically using our old ladder. They totally refurbished it, reworked all the systems, and put it on a brand new cabin chassis. And we realized a savings of about $150,000 per unit. So in total, for those 4 pieces of equipment, we saw about a $600,000 savings in our vehicle replacement program. All 4 of those units were completed during 2009 and have been delivered and are now in service. And during that time, each time we would send one of these units off, the company gave us basically a loaner unit to use while that unit was being refurbished, so we didn't see any kind of drop-off in service of our fleet. And at the end of that program, they offered to sell us that unit that we were using, and the price of it was very affordable, and you approved that back in September. So now we purchased that vehicle, and since that time we've been using it as a reserve unit. We're going to talk about that one here in just a few minutes. Current status, of course, I talked to you about this last time we spoke about it. We had required testing, periodic testing that we do, and that was done in January, and we had 12 units that were scheduled for that test. Again, 5 units didn't require that because of their age and where they're at in the schedule. All 8 frontline units that required testing failed in some form or fashion, and again, I want to stress that some of those weren't what you'd consider to be major issues. They ran the gamut from anywhere from a cracked hydraulic hose to wore-out heel pins, which are the large pins that are at the pivot point at the base of the ladder. So again, it was all over the place as far as what caused those units to fail their scheduled testing. 7 of those units that failed were scheduled for replacement either this year or the next year. And again, 3 of the 4 reserve units we had failed, and a lot of those, again, were getting aged anyway, and we had some issues with those. We have determined through that process that those units are unrepairable, and we'll either use those for parts and or sell in an upcoming surplus auction. And on the repairable one, that we found that we had major repairs. I want to stress that point again, that there were 7 of those that the manufacturer of those particular pieces of equipment is no longer in business. So if we believe them to be repairable, it was going to be an issue of whether or not we could obtain the necessary parts to be able to do that. And so we've gone through that process, and now we know where we're at with those pieces of equipment. Our current plan, 4 of those existing frontline units will be repaired and remain frontline units for the time being. In fact, we have 1 or 2 of those that have been repaired already and are about to be put back in service. 3 of the existing frontline aerials will be repaired and placed in reserve status. So we will be able to repair those, but because of the age of them and because we have some replacement to do in the next couple of years, we'll put those in our reserve fleet. On February 9th, you approved the contract for a new 100-foot aerial, and that contract allowed for the purchase of up to 4. And this recently purchased reserve unit that I spoke of earlier, that unit, because of the miles on it, because of the condition that it's in, we felt like it was good enough to put as a frontline unit, and we've done that. So that will help us replace one of those ladders that needed replacing. We recently went out to bid again and drew up specifications for either demo or used apparatus. Chief Clay, because of this earlier purchase we made back in September, gave us the idea that may be another way we could look at maybe realizing some savings. And so he contacted all the manufacturers and asked what might be available of these types of units that were either demo units or maybe even slightly used. And we had the bid opening a week before last. Well, the bid opening's today, but we had a pre-bid meeting, earlier, and we had a good turnout from the manufacturers on that. So we feel fairly confident that through this right here that we'll either find either some demo units, there's possibly some what we refer to as maybe a base model, a non-custom ladder that we might be able to purchase. And hopefully, from what we've seen so far, we might be able to save as much as $100,000 on the current price of an aerial ladder. So in summary, since 2006, we've had 5 units replaced. We'll be replacing 4 this current fiscal year. Again, that has to do with the one that I spoke of just a second ago that we purchased back in September, the one that was approved in February, and we're looking at another 2 units, either, again, through the demo program or possibly having to use that existing contract that was approved in February. We were planning to replace 2 units in the next fiscal year and possibly 2 more in 2012. So if that were to come about and we are on this type of schedule here, then we will have replaced every frontline unit over the last 6 years. That will help us to build back up our reserve fleet by taking some of those current frontline units and placing them in reserve status. Wanted to point out one more thing here before I finish up and take any questions that you might have, that some of the savings that we've realized through the refurbishment program and possibly through the bids that we're looking at now, we purchased a light rescue unit, and I see a picture of that. This is going to be a pilot type of program. We're going to house this unit at Station 22 up around Britton and Broadway Extension. They currently have a smaller, basically a brush pumper that they've modified to run vehicle accidents out on the turnpike, because they run quite a few of them. And so we're going to put a unit like this in service. It'll have all the tools and equipment similar to what an aerial apparatus does, but the crew at that station will have the option, depending on the location of the call and the nature of the call, to use this lighter, smaller unit as opposed to the larger aerial. And so we're going to give that a try, and as we evaluate that in the upcoming years, that might be an option for what we look at down the road as far as replacement of these vehicles, that maybe we don't need as many of the large aerials. Maybe we could use this type of unit in some of the more outlying areas. And again, with this type of unit, we think we'll save wear and tear on the larger pieces of equipment. So we're going to be testing that concept. And again, this is just another means that we're going to look at to possibly realize some savings in our fleet replacement program. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions? Yes.
Chief, You said there were 13 stations equipped with aerial equipment now.
Yes, sir.
Are all those units what you would characterize as frontline units?
Yes, sir.
And how do you use the reserve units that you've got?
Well, if one of those frontline units is needing repair, it has to go down to the shop for a time, then we use those reserve units in their place.
And the second, I guess, question is, why do you have rescue equipment on those aerial units? It would seem like the rescue responding to automobile accidents and the aerial equipment are two entirely different systems. And I'm having trouble to understand why they were combined.
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, you take an aerial piece of aerial equipment and you go to a traffic accident because it's got equipment to rescue people from the...
Yes, sir.
And it seems like the aerial equipment would be designed to fight a high-rise fire or something where you had to get some people in the air. It seems like those two uses are not compatible. And my question was, why did you use a piece of very expensive, very specialized equipment to respond to automobile accidents?
Well, again, they carry the heavier tools and equipment necessary for those vehicle extrications. Years ago, we did have what you would refer to as rescue squad units, okay, and we decommissioned those some years ago, basically combined the functions of the squad and the ladder together at that point, and that's why they're running on the vehicle accidents now.
And one final question: in the long term, is there a plan to have aerial equipment at all our stations?
No, sir. I mean, that type of piece of equipment, you're right, is specialized. It wouldn't be necessary to have that. The bulk of our fleet are fire engines. There's 36 of those in the city. And those are the units that pump water, have the hose. And again, that's what makes the majority of our calls, medical, fire-related, so forth. But a ladder, again, is a specialized piece of equipment for some of the reasons that you just spoke of, again, as well as doing the bulk of our rescue work.
Yeah, Brian?
Chief, just thank you for putting this together. I really appreciate it.
You bet.
What's the difference in the price in the new light use vehicle and an aerial apparatus?
The light rescue, about $162,000, Lance is telling me, and of course, brand new ladder is about $750,000.
And is that new vehicle, it'll be out on Britain and Broadway Extension, largely for medical response? No.
Again, the concept is that both vehicles will be housed there. Have one crew for both vehicles, depending on the nature of the call. If it was a working structure fire, okay, more than likely that crew is going to opt for that ladder and use it. However, if it was a structure fire in the far corner, northeast corner of the city, where they really don't necessarily need that big 100-foot aerial, they could still opt for that smaller unit, and again, on vehicle accidents up the turnpike, those types of things. So it's something that we're going to put into service, kind of, again, evaluate, let them basically tell us how well the program works and you know, how we should maybe look at it in the future.
Pete? Then Larry?
I think that idea is a great idea. I mean, to use a smaller vehicle on accidents, I mean, I see a lot of accidents along I-240 where there's a very large vehicle there, and sometimes the fire vehicle is so large it's almost obtrusive to the accident scene. I mean, it's so big. There's a couple of places there where there's virtually no shoulder, and then also get that view out my window of the nursing home across the street. And I think that's a very positive step in the right direction.
Larry?
Chief, if I could, just clear something up for me. There are 13 stations that have the aerial fire apparatus.
Yes, sir.
Okay? And as we sit here today, are all 13 stations, do they all have an operational aerial fire apparatus in place right now?
No, sir. There's at least one that I know of that the actual unit is there, and they're using that unit to respond to calls. Because of the testing that was done and the failure of that piece of equipment on the ladder itself, we're not allowing them to use the ladder. but they're still responding to calls in that vehicle. We just will not allow them to use the ladder because it failed the testing, but we should have it repaired in the next few weeks.
And then if one of these units that is operational today does develop a problem, it goes in for repair, and one of these backup units
Yes, sir.
gets placed out there.
Yes, sir.
So the citizens have the coverage from the fire apparatus
Yes, sir.
units. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Gary?
Well, I just want to make a few comments. It's over the years, it's not unusual to use an aerial apparatus for the vehicle itself and to carry all the other tools and have the ladder out of service, we call it. So that's not an unusual situation. It's not optimum by any means, but you can still use the vehicle to get to the scenes, to carry the personnel, and to carry all the other tools that they need for that. I think the concept of the light rescue unit is I applaud your willingness to look at that. We've kind of gone. There was a period of time many years ago when the aerial ladders didn't hardly run at all. When they only ran on structure fires, there was a lot of time that they just sit in the stations and didn't do anything. And then we put the rescue and the vehicle accident and all the other stuff duties on them, and now we've almost overburdened them. They're putting an awful lot of miles on the vehicles. So I think looking at the light rescue program is a way to look at that, and the ability for the station officer to determine which one he wants to take is a concept that I think we can use not only in rescue but in some other situations too. So I think that I applaud you for looking at that. But it's not an easy task to think about, because the downside of having multiple vehicles and giving them a choice to take also adds to your fleet. And when you add to the fleet, you add to the need for more mechanics, and you add to the need for more maintenance money, and you add the need for more gasoline or diesel and all that kind of stuff. So it's not an absolute without some negatives to it, but I think it's going to be a situation that can certainly work out in the long run, and I applaud you looking at that. But our battalion chiefs on the fire department for a long time have had to. They keep up daily with what vehicles can do what, and if they have an aerial ladder, I'm kind of going to where Larry's question was on servicing the citizens. If they happen to have one, you have one right now, you think that the ladder's out of service, those battalion chiefs out there certainly know where they can get another one and get it placed and utilize it if they need the elevated aerial itself and so forth. So the citizens shouldn't worry that they're not going to get serviced if they need it in those commercial structures and so forth.
At no time did we not have a vehicle completely out of service, where there wasn't some vehicle, be it a reserve or some other type of vehicle there to convey those firefighters and their equipment to the scene at any time during this whole process.
All right, any other questions for Chief? All right, thanks. Anything else from City Manager reports?
No, sir.
All right. Citizens to be heard. We have one person who has signed up, Brett Weller. Good morning, Brett. We will need your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Brett Weller. I live on 5600 North May. I'm here to talk today to the council about Google's recent Fiber for Communities project, otherwise known as Google Gigabit. I'm aware that the government agency within the city are currently looking into this and will be making a decision on how Oklahoma City will respond. What exactly is Google Gigabit service, you might ask? Well, it's going to be testing out, Google is going to be testing out a 1 gigabit ultra high-speed internet in select cities. Basically, our current internet that we can get right now is about this big. Google's going to offer it this big. It's a pretty amazing thing. These cities are going to be chosen by Google through means not made public, but in order to be considered a test city, the local government or citizens must fill out an online RFI, a request for information form. Then later on in the year, Google will choose a test city or cities and begin the next stage of constructing this network. The deadline for submitting this is March 26th. That's 17 days away. I'd like to talk to the council here about the channels of communications and ideas we, the citizens of Oklahoma City, have with the city government. I believe right now the most valuable tool for Oklahoma City getting Google here is community effort. Google isn't looking for city governments, it's looking for communities. I understand we're not going to be like Topeka, Kansas, and change our name to Google City, Oklahoma. But the level of urgency should be taken to bring this massive technological breakthrough such as this to our beloved city. This isn't something Oklahoma City government is going to achieve on its own. It can't, and it won't. This is not how it's going to work. That's not how Google works. We must have an active participation in the community from businesses, individuals, and families that are informed and educated on this cutting-edge technology. We need to spread the word. Nothing is going to meet us halfway. We cannot offer any money or benefits to this company. This is a fight to show Google why Oklahoma City deserves the honor of being its test city, and it must be fought by everyone, not just a select few. One of the things that we could kind of do to bring the community together is, say, ask people in the medical field for ideas and things that they might have, how to use this Google Gigabit service, and the way that it would affect day-to-day operations. It's also my understanding that the nation's first all-digital hospital is up there on Memorial. I mean, we're primed for it. I mean, can you imagine how easy it's going to be to transfer MRIs or other life-saving things with this internet? I mean, it's unheard of, really. And we have an opportunity to bring that here to Oklahoma City. We need involvement, corporations, small businesses, city departments, Oklahoma City court system, police, fire, schools, hospitals, libraries, families, individuals, and you, the city council. The CDC released a report in 2007 stating that 1 in 4 Oklahomans are cell phone-only households. That's number 2 in the nation behind only Washington, D.C., which, by the way, Washington, D.C. CTO is fully behind Google coming to that city. Current technology and trends indicate by 2020 the mobile device will be the main source for people getting connected, and Oklahoma is showing it's ready for this kind of expansion. With Google Gigabit here, it would create a massive amount of jobs and start people's careers the way AOL affected us in 1996. Google is an open access type corporation. It's going to bring this Google Gigabit here and offer many other corporations and intranets and infrastructures to piggyback off of its service. So it's an excellent way to foster ideas and business and income and more business. More business is good. I've set up a Facebook page just for this reason, to kind of tell people everything that I've mentioned here today and to get people involved. If you go on Facebook, you can search for Oklahoma City Google Gigabit, and you'll find this web page with a bunch of articles that I found online and such. That's all I really have to say. I'd like to see City Council kind of push this, and let's get involved. There's approximately 70 other cities that are involved right now, and I think we could do a little bit more.
All right. Brett, thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. I mean, I understand getting involved. Give me some specifics. I mean, what could I do?
Well, tell your friends. Spread the word. If you know people in the media, tell them about that. I haven't heard a thing in Oklahoma City News about this yet. Gentlemen,
Just on the matter of who, I mean, you mentioned an application. Is this an initiative by a city or a local chamber of commerce?
Yes, they're asking city governments and municipalities to fill out an RFI online, as well as community citizens. So that's why I'm saying it's everyone. It's kind of, they want everybody included into this. Not only the city council to go fill that out, but also the community to show that they want that to come here. I mean, they're not just going to give it to a city just because the city government wants it. It's got to be.
But the community application could be made as well by the Chamber of Commerce?
That you would need to look into a little bit. I do believe that they're looking for one person to represent the city government. So whomever that would be that you guys chose, would need to fill that out and kind of be that point of
interject, Jim?
Contact.
Could I respond to this a little bit? This came out 3 weeks ago, maybe. I don't remember exactly how long.
Couple weeks, yeah.
How long again? Our IT department is working with my office to take a look at what the options are and public information to take a look at it. It's really a neat concept out there. It would bring value to the community. A couple of things of relevance, I believe. They're asking for communities between 50 and 500,000. Technically, we're outside that. Technically, we're larger than that. I believe that they're probably, or I've been advised, that they're looking for an area to come in with some density. And it's going to be probably difficult for us to achieve that density. That doesn't mean we're not looking at it. I have talked to the Chamber. I've talked to other groups about it, and we're still trying to ascertain whether we want to put that effort in to make it happen. I don't mean to be negative at all, because you're never going to get it unless you try, but we do have a couple of hurdles on this process, but we are internally evaluating it, and we'll have to make that decision within the next day or two.
Okay. We have executive session. We'll be back. Thanks, Brett.
Sir.